Welcome to our podcast. This is Cash Bell Industries podcast. This is Alicia Cash and Larry Isbell here. We're continuing to look at the sermons of Dr. Helmut Thielicke, the German theologian who was a sort of chaplain during World War II, later the chancellor of the University at Hamburg in Germany, and of course a well-known preacher in Germany. And we're continuing to look at his sermons. Today we are looking at his sermon in his book, The Silence of God, titled The Message of Redeeming Light. It's a Christmas message, the message of redeeming light.
Which works out since we're coming into the Christmas season.
Yeah, it works as we're approaching the holiday season here. With Christmas. At first I was thinking, Alicia, that sometimes he repeats himself a lot in his sermons, right? But I think, when I think about it, those of us who preach often do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's sometimes repeating yourself, repeating themes is important. Because that's how we learn, I think, often.
Yeah.
Repetitive themes. So I think it's good that he does that. I sometimes think that it's like always having to have Faith 101 classes to repeat themes, but every once in a while we need a 101 class to refresh us on things. So I think that's a good thing. Who among us would not benefit from a 101 review of things like history or mathematics or science or biblical studies or anything like that? So, and let's face it, we often don't get it the first time around, right?
No.
Yeah.
Well, to come at it from different directions usually is the best way to learn stuff.
Yeah.
And that's how you establish that this is something of value, is like if you come from this direction and come from this direction and come from this direction and you all come to the same conclusion, then it's something that is of value.
Yes, right. Yep. Part of the sermon here too, we talked about this before, of course, you and I. To acknowledge the light, he says there has to be darkness. To acknowledge the light, there has to be a sense of darkness.
Ignore the puppers upstairs.
We have dogs upstairs barking.
Yeah, it's dinner time for them, so they're excited.
Yep.
Do you want to read There the eternal light breaks through. All the world does shine anew, bright its radiance in the night, to make us children of the light. Is that from a song? Or
it must be a hymn. Must be a hymn somewhere, yeah. Or a poem someplace, that he's aware of, He was pretty well classically trained and everything, so it's always hard to tell.
Yeah.
From my dumb perspective, when it comes to classics,
you're doing better than I.
my misinformed perspective, he'll make references like that, and I'll think, I wonder where that comes from, So,
Yeah.
But read that again. Read that slowly, would you?
There the eternal light breaks through. All the world doth shine anew. Bright its radiance in the night, to make us children of the light.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he goes into talking about the illusion of the light at Christmas that many people look at, of just a temporary lightness in the dark. And then he talks about the real light of Christmas, which is that there is light in the dark no matter how dark the night is for you. Yeah,
I think he's implying that we stay at the shallow end of the pool too often when it comes to things like Christmas, right?
Yeah.
We'll have all the lights of Christmas, but not understand what the meaning of the light is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I call that staying at the shallow end of the pool in life, right?
Yeah.
He also talks about how we use things in life to distract us from the true light.
Yes.
From Christ and from the claims of God in the scriptures or in faith.
Yeah.
We engage a lot of distractions.
Yeah.
He talks about that. Yeah.
That's kind of part of the point of the Grinch Stole Christmas. Like they have all the trappings of Christmas all the gifts, all the toys, all
Yeah.
the food, and everything else like that. But it's a distraction from the really important things, which good on them.
Yeah.
The people do actually acknowledge, and
Yeah.
they're still happy on Christmas morning even without all that stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Although it has been severely commercialized,
Yeah.
um, I don't know that people really get it because there's a lot of people that
Yeah. Commercialization perhaps is one of those things that distracts us from the true light.
oh yeah
Right. Yeah.
yeah
Yeah. That gets into what we allow marketing to do to us in our culture. Yeah.
yeah. I'm actually reading an interesting book about that right now. It's
Mm.
called When Ladies Go a Thieving.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And it's about how in the late 1800s or early 1900s, because of the Industrial Revolution and all of these goods being available in department stores, there was a big rash of a lot of middle class women who were stealing stuff. They were shoplifting.
Oh, yeah.
And no one really knew why. They
Yeah.
put it down as just a mania, that it was just an
Yeah.
illness.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't dealing with like acknowledging the root causes of that, and part of it was the
Yeah.
but having these things were status symbols,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they went from a society where you mostly made everything that your house had
Yeah.
to buying most of the stuff for the house, and
Yeah.
going from you had what you needed to survive, and now you have this burgeoning middle class that can have stuff that you don't, that has no purpose other than aesthetic.
Yeah.
And
Right. Right.
the only purpose of it is to be a status symbol.
Yeah.
And the middle class was in that middle range of, well, we gotta show that we're good enough that maybe we can one day be upper class.
Yeah.
But if we mess up, then we'll be back in lower class.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, so there was
Yeah.
a lot of moral
Moral,
burden.
psychological factors,
Yeah,
right?
the moral and societal burdens on women especially,
Mm.
because they were the ones that were buying for the house
Yeah. Yeah.
and in charge of the bills and in charge of the social standing of the family.
Yeah. That reminds me of that British comedy. It's called Keeping Up Appearances,
Okay, yeah.
where this woman does everything she can to appear to be upper class.
Right.
It's a British thing. But we have that in this country, too.
Oh yeah.
We have class issues. Yeah.
They have a big thing with
Yeah.
the Instagram influencers.
Yeah.
They'll look like they have a lot of money, but what they have are empty bags. Like they'll
Oh,
have
okay.
just the bags from these
Oh, yeah.
famous stores,
Oh, yeah.
or they'll rent a Ferrari just
Oh.
to take pictures with, and
Yeah.
then but they don't actually own it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on
Oh, yeah.
on the internet of
Yeah.
they're creating this false sense of luxury that
Yeah.
isn't real. They even have these fake hangars where you can go and look like you're sitting on a private plane, but
Yeah.
it's just a room on the ground that you're taking pictures
Oh,
of.
wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
It is really wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
illusion
Boy. Yes.
or wanting to give
Yep.
the impression that you're better than you are
Mm-hmm.
has been around for a very long time.
And it drives. Interestingly, we let marketing really drive our culture and our economy and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's interesting because I remember when 9/11 happened. You know, the president at the time happened to be George Bush at the time. He encouraged everybody to go out and start buying. Go out and start buying.
That's weird.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Help the economy. Go out and buy. Yeah. I think it was Bush. I'm pretty sure that was Bush.
Yeah, that was
I
Bush.
could be wrong about that. I think it was, but
Well, I don't know if it was Bush that said go out and buy, but
Yeah.
Bush was president then.
yeah.
It probably was.
Yeah, I think the word, for some reason at the time,
I
there
think
was,
they were afraid of people just shutting up and shutting
yeah,
down.
go out and buy, yeah.
And
And that was interesting that our economy depends so much on that,
it really
just
does.
buying for the sake of buying, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, we saw that with
Yeah.
2020 with the shutdowns.
yeah,
How devastated
yeah,
our economy became and
Right.
how many people lost jobs because people
Right.
couldn't go out to buy.
right. And we're really,
Yeah.
We're hooked on that.
And we're still seeing the knock-on effects of that, because there are a lot of
Yeah.
small businesses that tried to hold on,
Right.
and we're now in the fourth year out, and they're like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Right.
And it,
Yep. Yep.
I
It's
do
interesting.
think it's interesting that we now no longer have the 24-hour stores. So Walmart's not
Oh.
open 24 hours for us anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Kroger isn't. I don't know, other places maybe they are, but not in town here.
No.
I think Walgreens and CVS are still open, but their pharmacies are not open 24 hours.
Right. Right.
They close at a certain point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of a good thing, I think.
Probably because maybe we become a little bit less dependent that way.
Yeah,
Right.
do you really need to go to Walmart at
Yeah.
2 in the morning?
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
is there anything you really need there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same for like Black Friday is no longer,
Yeah.
that was creeping
Yeah.
into Thursday so much.
Right. Right.
And they brought it back.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's not open until like, what, 7 a.m. or 6
Yeah.
a.m. or whatever.
Yeah.
But not the ridiculous 3 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Yeah. Well, we're an addicted culture. We are an addicted culture. And in some ways, there's not much we can do about it, except maybe on a personal level. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
It's hard to explain to your kids, like,
Yeah.
I know you want all this stuff, but you don't need
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Yeah. Right.
You know, I'm dealing with that with my youngest right now, because,
Yeah.
and I get it, you know,
Yeah.
all this stuff looks cool,
Right.
but you don't need it all,
Right. Right.
and
Yeah.
there's more to Christmas than the stuff
Yeah.
that you get.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But she is pretty good about wanting to give stuff too, so.
We are, we talk about Christian teaching being, in my circles, Christian classes on Christianity for kids are called catechism classes.
Okay,
Your instruction book in the Christian faith is sometimes called a catechism.
okay,
And the class is called catechism class oftentimes.
okay.
And a friend of mine once said, the Christian catechism sometimes begins in the 7th or the 8th grade, right?
Okay, yeah.
The consumer catechism begins in the cradle. Yeah,
Yeah,
the consumer catechism. We are catechized by the culture, yeah.
yeah.
And the market certainly catechizes us, the market needs and all that, yeah. Yeah. As free as we think we are, we're very catechized. But, yeah, interesting, yep. So that's, Thielicke talks about distractions there. We get distracted from the true light. And he makes the point that the only true light comes from outside of us, And that in the Reformation that was called Christ ex nobis, or Christ outside of us.
Okay.
Christ ex nobis, yeah. Christ outside of us. But that's a very important thing for Orthodox Christianity. That the truth comes from outside of us. It's not from within us.
Okay.
That's a big distinction. It's a pretty serious distinction to make in our society, where we think all truth comes from inside of us,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The truth comes from outside of us. When he talks about distractions, he talks about a Beethoven piece, which is a dream of forgetfulness. That when in Beethoven's piece, people by listening to the music forget about the problems of their life momentarily. It's a distraction from life.
Yeah. Well, it's.
And yeah.
Do you want me to read that?
Yeah, go ahead and read that. Read that slowly for us.
Naturally, men cried into the magic circle of Christmas light, whether dreamed, invented, or authentic. They all come out of the drabness of shadow spheres to be merry for a while in this light. The cold and hungry, the inmates of underground shelters and other places of refuge, the outcast, homeless, and lonely, the most pitiable with the illusions of the distorted minds. They all come to forget for a moment, to drown their memories, to enjoy a happy moment of distraction, like the chorus of prisoners in Beethoven's Fidelio, from whom the streaming sunshine over the prison yard evokes a song of yearning, causing them to forget the dungeon for an hour of dreaming, which is brought again up in Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, my thought in reading this was, that's where Stephen King got that when he wrote The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
have
don't
that
remember
moment.
what song they actually play.
It was an opera. I think it was maybe a German or Italian opera.
I wonder if it's that opera.
Maybe,
I'll have to look it up.
yeah.
I'll try and put a clip in of it.
Because the Morgan Freeman in his narrative
Yeah.
in that film, he says, we didn't understand what that lady was singing about,
Yeah.
but for a moment, it helped us to forget,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe we could put that,
I'll try and put that.
find that scene and put it in here.
Yeah.
If we could find it, yeah.
If they'll let me.
Yeah, yep, yeah. Yeah, so that's forgetfulness, and one of the points he makes here is that our own methods of forgetfulness are ephemeral, they're short-lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very temporary.
Yep, yep. That seems to be Dr. Thielicke's way of confronting Pollyanna, Peter Pan kind of false optimism. That's my own thought on that.
That is,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing a bit of that with the politics lately, of the highs and lows that both sides are going through,
Yeah,
and how
yeah,
they can be completely devastated
yeah,
by this one vote
yeah,
and think their whole worlds are destroyed because this person
Yeah.
got elected or that person got elected.
yeah,
And the reality is, your life is probably going to be about the same.
right, yeah,
There's going to be some changes, but those are completely out of your hands.
mm-hmm,
And you still have the ability to make your life today better than it was yesterday.
on some levels at least, yeah.
Irrespective of the government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
on
for the
some
most-
levels, yeah, that's true, yeah.
On most levels.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some things that obviously we would hope for better things, world peace
Mhm.
and prosperity and freedom for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things we all hope for.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of those things you kind of have to do yourself too.
Sure,
I mean, the world
yeah.
is always going to
Mhm.
be at war, and that's something that he brings up here. That
And of course, on the other side, there are those who think this is the second coming of Christ, that,
yeah.
you know,
Well, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
like, either way that it went,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
were going to be people that felt completely disillusioned and hopeless.
yeah,
And the point is we have Christ. We don't have to be
right,
hopeless, irregardless
Right.
of who's president
right,
or what's going on in the world.
yeah,
And that's what his point is that there's never going to be a political paradise.
right. No matter whether
Yeah.
it's up or down or which party it is.
Yeah,
Right.
because
Right.
God is there
Right.
with you
Mm-hmm.
today
Mm-hmm.
in the hell that the world has made or you've
Mhm.
made or whatever
Mhm.
difficulties you're
Yeah.
going through. God is
Yeah.
there with you because he came to earth to suffer.
Right, right. And I think what Thielicke would say there is that even if we're killed by the circumstances, even if it's terrible
Yeah,
and unalterably terrible,
yeah,
Christ is still with us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I
That's the
sometimes
promise. Yeah.
tell people that the reason that we have grace is because God came to earth. I think before he came to earth, he kind of,
Mm-hmm.
you think about him as a being of pure intellect,
Yeah.
of pure, like not out of a corporal body.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had all these theories about how life should be and how people should behave.
Mm-hmm.
But then when he came down to earth and actually walked around in a body and felt hunger, felt pain, felt despair, felt joy and laughter and love,
Yeah.
it was different. It's like an intellectual telling a farmer how they should farm.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot different
Yeah.
once you get that intellectual actually out
Yeah.
in the muck in the field.
Yeah.
Then they're like, oh, this is different than I thought
Right.
it would be.
Right.
And that's why we have the grace, because he
Mhm.
came down and saw how difficult it is.
Mm-hmm. At least shows us that God identifies with us. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been there. He
Yeah.
felt all these pains that you have felt,
Yeah. And that runs against a classical view of God from the Greeks and and from some early Christian sources, which say that God is, they call it the aseity of God, A-S-E-I-T-Y, the aseity of God, the unchangeableness of God, which some interpret to be that God is beyond feelings, beyond our feelings. However, the incarnation, it can be argued, is what
Yeah.
you're saying. God enters into our feelings
Yeah.
and feels our suffering. So that runs counter to classic views of God being untouchable, unalterable, unchangeable, beyond feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of saw that when,
Mm-hmm.
what was that? I don't remember exactly the scripture, but when Jesus was out in the desert and he was tempted by the devil
Yeah.
multiple times, like,
Yeah.
he had a hard time resisting. It
Right,
wasn't as
right.
simple as, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
It was,
Right.
it was,
it was
a
truly
real,
a temptation. Yeah.
real temptation.
Yeah. Testing, real testing, real.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had to be real, or it's just fake.
Yeah.
Yeah. It had to be real. Yeah. And also on the cross,
Yeah.
the cry of dereliction on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's real stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's real feelings.
Yeah, that's true despair.
Yep. Yep.
And Thielicke brings that up. He's like, there's no, where is it? No depth of human agony cannot be brought into the span between the crib and the cross, where it is taken and enclosed by nail-pierced hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because he bore all the guilt and pain of an infinite time of places and hosts and lies beyond the extreme limit which can be reached by human suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that line, we cannot sink so low that God is not lower.
Yeah, that's a good line.
Is
Yes.
comforting.
Yep. That's somebody once called that one of my teachers. The scandal of the incarnation, he called it. The scandal in people's eyes, it's a scandal that, and this is the fancy theological language, that the finite is capable of that the infinite is capable of the finite.
Okay. Explain yourself.
And the finite is capable of the infinite. In other words, God is infinite,
Yeah.
but God is capable of becoming flesh, an individual man in the first century.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's called the infinite becoming capable of the finite. Yeah. A further teaching, at least in my tradition, would be that in Holy Communion the same thing happens. Because many of us as Christians believe that Christ actually becomes present in, with, and under the bread and the wine in communion.
Okay.
That's the infinite becoming capable of the finite, and the finite becoming capable of the infinite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fancy theological jargon, but it's meaningful when you ponder it, when you're able to
Yeah.
think about it. That the finite is capable of the infinite. It is the promise that in, with, and under Holy Communion, the bread and the wine, Christ is truly present. The cosmic Christ is somehow present in that finite
Yeah.
moment. Yeah. And also in mere human words, we believe God is present in mere human words
Yeah.
that come to us in Scripture, for example. So the Word is also a moment of the infinite becoming capable of the finite becoming capable of the infinite through human speech.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It's a wonderful, it's an awesome thing in every sense of the word awesome, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thielicke goes on too to flesh out the implications of this idea. From the cradle to the cross is how he puts it. From the cradle to the cross, as we mentioned, the cry of dereliction, my God, why have you forsaken me? But it all starts with God becoming in flesh in this little baby born to a peasant couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Thielicke makes the point that it's
Yeah.
this tiny little body, this frail. You wouldn't imagine the power and might of God to be imprisoned in this
Yeah.
pitiful, tiny body born in a manger, not of a
Yeah.
king,
Right.
not of some powerful person.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
Thielicke addresses the issue of some Christians almost want to get rid of the bodily association of Christianity, right? And he talks about some hymns where we have kind of, I call it a bad soul theology. The idea that the body and the soul are completely separate all the time. That's kind of a heresy.
Okay.
That's kind of a heresy, and he addresses that in the sermon as well. There are hymns he considers to be rather negative hymns that do that. He cites one of them in the text of the sermon here. But
Yeah, because he talks about how that promises that the light of God will be with you after you die, rather than
Yeah.
with you now.
right,
Like that promise isn't for later, that's for now.
exactly, yes, right. It's a promise for today and not just for the hereafter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And not
yeah.
just for the good times.
Right.
Just at Christmas.
right,
It's
right. Yep,
for the dark times.
yep, yeah. He talks about how we idealize nature sometimes, and that's not the answer. He says, we see the beautiful sun, right?
Yeah.
We see the beautiful sun. We think, oh, you see God all around us, but the sun can also kill you, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other side of just looking at nature.
Yeah.
So another attempt we make it almost distracting ourselves, but maybe missing the point, is by making creation the focus sometimes. The sun, the beautiful sunset. I don't need to worship God or I don't need to go to a Christian worship or
Yeah.
Jewish worship. I don't need any of that because I'm out on the fishing boat and I see the sun rise. Well, that's nice, except sometimes the sun will kill you. You know, in the water too. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can have too much water, you can have too much sun.
Nature can betray you. As wonderful as the cells of our body are, sometimes our cells betray us and become cancerous. Right?
Yeah.
So that's always important. And Thielicke kind of points that out. Nature has this duality.
Yeah.
It's not all, nature is not all light and goodness.
Yeah. I told you that that Terry Pratchett story about how one of the characters, when he was younger, he was out on a walkabout, you know,
Yeah.
and he came to a stream and he saw this mother otter and her pups, and the otter pulled out a salmon and ripped it open, and the salmon was full of eggs, a roe, and it spilled out, and so the mother otter and pups were feeding on the mother salmon and her babies. So
Yeah.
mother and child feeding on mother and child.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's human beings, from a moral perspective, you can't justify that,
Yeah.
but from a nature perspective,
Yeah.
it has
Right.
to be.
Right.
It's kind of like in Job, when God talks to Job, it's like, I've made these terrible,
Yeah.
the hippopotamus, which are like river monsters, and I've done all these things.
Yeah.
You don't understand why,
Right.
and it's not
right.
your place to try and understand
Right.
why.
Right.
And it's,
Which once again, this is, and I think Thielicke would say this and does say it. This is why we need revelation from outside of ourselves and from out,
right,
in a sense, from outside of what we consider to be the natural.
yeah,
Because the natural only leads you so far. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got into a conversation with a friend recently about this kind of thing, where my friend was talking about if only we can get past our egos and things like that. And I thought, well, we have psychological tools to try to overcome our ego and stuff like that. But ultimately, trying to get outside of yourself is like trying to catch your own shadow sometimes,
yeah,
we need a word from outside of ourselves to help us, right? We can't conjure all of it up on our own,
Right.
which I think is an underlying
yeah,
theme of this sermon for him. Yeah, yeah. He talks about the human imagination. Basically, again, in these pages, that can run wild, right? Soren Kierkegaard talked about how we tend to infinitize things. That can be a blessing or a problem for us. We can infinitize goodness, but we can also infinitize negativity.
yeah,
Yeah, and we do in fact magnify and infinitize those things. Yeah,
yeah, overly
yeah,
dream up possibilities that haven't actually happened, but
right,
but
right.
have the same feelings from them. Even
Yes,
though they
right.
haven't happened and probably won't happen.
That's almost a uniquely human feature, I think, that we can in our heads. That's a function of fear, which goes beyond the moment of fear, the fearful encounter, the bad encounter, we have a capacity to go beyond that and keep it in our heads
Yeah.
so that anything can trigger that negative feeling, you know. Anything can bring on that anxiety attack, right?
Yeah.
That can happen. That can happen 6 months after a bad event. You can have an anxiety attack because the human psyche is able to recreate that.
That steps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as you mentioned, one of Thielicke's points here is, for all of this, yet in faith the light is present even in the chaos. The light is present even in the chaos.
Yeah.
That's what takes faith to believe, right? Jesus says when Jesus hears his friend Lazarus is dead or is dying, he delays getting there. In John chapter 11, he delays getting there, and Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, they complain to him, Lord, if you'd been here, he wouldn't have died, right?
Yeah.
And Jesus said, well, you don't understand. I am the resurrection and the life. You know, it's present. It's present now, even though we don't always see it, right?
Yeah.
It's present. It's in the present moment. By the way, that's in theology. There's the word eschatology, which means the last things, the end result of all things.
Mm-hmm.
It's called eschatology. In John's gospel, many say he has a present eschatology, that the very presence of Christ is the end of all things, even here and now, in a positive way.
Yeah.
The presence of Christ, yeah. I am the resurrection and the life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. He talks about
yeah,
there's a new song, that there's no longer the old song of love and death. And we also speak
Yeah.
of new earth and all. Where is it? It's not the deceptive rhythm of joy and sorrow, day and night, winter and spring, the alterations of which seem to bring us brief redemption. No, this is the new splendor of the fact that we have been loved and visited and dearly bought by a love that caused the child to be born in our misery and to suffer our terrible death on the cross.
yeah. I wrote a note on that too. The new splendor, born in our misery and killed on the cross.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the promise of Christianity, the truth of Christianity.
Yeah. We don't have to wait for
Yeah.
that joy.
And at the very end of this, he makes a nice appeal to Romans chapter 8, where Paul says, what can separate you from the love of Christ? What can separate us from the love of Christ?
Yeah.
Can death or persecution or peril or sword? Paul says, no, in all of these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's how he ends the sermon.
Okay.
It's a very nice way to end it. It's one of my favorite Bible passages is that Romans chapter 8. It's actually verses 31 through 39 of Romans chapter 8. It's a great, great passage of Scripture. It's the reason we use it at Christian funerals often, that
Okay.
passage. It's
Yeah.
read at funerals. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great promise.
Okay,
He's always with us. Christ is always with us, no matter what's going on.
Do we want to end there, or do you have?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop. Yeah,
Okay.
Good place to end. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. We hope you've been enjoying this series, and please like, subscribe, leave us some comments or feedback of what you like or didn't like, and that's all I got. What do you say?
Thanks for being with us. We're glad to be here for you, and hope you're able to gain something that is life changing for you as the days come.
Yeah.
God bless you.
God bless you. Amen.